Here this evening. Our speaker this evening has been in Thompsonville, I'm going to say Thompsonville rather than Enfield, quite a bit of late, but I think he's all done with his work. Over on Middle Road, for quite a few months, there was a gentleman working there on this house that's on our screen at this point, and got inquisitive as to what he was doing. And it's very interesting. Most of the time when a house is coming down, they're using the sledgehammer and pounding away and don't care what's happening with it. However, this gentleman was taking good care of every piece of wood that was in good shape. Without any delay, I would love to have Pianka, our speaker for today, to tell you a little further about that house that he did a lot of work on. Glenn is the president of the Historical Society down in Lebanon, as well as Basra. So he's familiar with the operation of historical societies and the pros and cons of having speakers and all. Without any further delay, Glenn, you could have the mic.
All right, thank you very much. I'm not going to use the microphone. If there's somebody that can't hear me, then I'll go over there, but I would rather stand over here and walk to my right, if that's okay.
Excuse me, at any time, if you feel that you prefer to have the mic, just get your hand up and we'll operate.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Thank you. We're going to talk about old buildings tonight, and I'm standing here looking like the Leaning Tower of Pisa because I pulled my back a couple of days ago, and I'm having a little bit of fun here, but it'll eventually get better. So if you see me wincing a little bit, you'll know what that's all about. This house here was presented to us about 2 years ago by a real estate agent who had the property listed, and the wishes of the property owners was that the house be removed but not demolished, which is an unusual request because oftentimes they just simply want it eradicated. They don't care where it goes and whatnot, but the family had the wherewithal and the emotion to want to see that it was going to find another home at another place. So this real estate person who I've dealt with on numerous times with situations similar to this contacted me and took me for a ride, and as soon as I stepped out of the car that day, I looked and I said, okay, we'll do this. And he said, well, that's awfully quick. How do you make an assessment that quickly? I said, I already know what's going on because it's just instinctual after you do it for so long, I guess. 1982 is when we started taking buildings down. When I started taking buildings down. At that time, I was employed by the state police. I was a trooper. I was working in the town of East Haddam at the time. There were a couple of buildings with the Brownell Mill down there that were going to be taken down. I took a couple of those down. And so I always had like this dual career going on at the same time. I retired about 15 years ago now, and I've been doing this full time. We've taken down 136 buildings, not all for reconstruction, however. Probably, I'm going to guess, I'd have to look back at my notes, but about in the 60s, about half of the buildings we actually saved complete to be able to put back. The other ones were taken down for salvage, for whatever we could get that was usable. Some were just so far gone that it was, just not practical to try to even save them in their entirety. So what inspired me to do this house? Well, the first thing that impresses me when I see a house like this is when someone put shake siding on there. I know that's not original. I know that the original clapboards are underneath, usually. And the other thing is if you look at that roof line right across, how crisp and straight it is, that kind of tells you what's going on with the rest of the house, just like me. You see my back like this, what's going on with the rest of my house? Well, if that was bent around a little bit or shifted or whatnot, we'd be looking for other problems that transfer right down to the foundation. We didn't see that here, so my initial instinct was that this was great. And it only got better. Mike. As I'm walking around the house, I'm looking at the line going down, and I'm saying, you know, this house was never meant to be anything but a salt box. And that's unusual too. So many of the so-called salt boxes that we know in Connecticut in particular were done in 2 phases. They were built as 2 rooms over 2 rooms, so you had that little square, which was generally usually about 18 feet deep. And then at some later time, when the family got bigger or whatever, they put the lean-to section, as it's been called, and add the other roof. This is what they call the cat slide salt box, because it just is straight down. And then you see the other style that has the broken back, where it just it comes down about halfway, and then it tilts out. Oh, you got to reactivate this.
New computer, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. All right, Mike, go ahead. So again, looking around the back of the house, you see how flat everything is, telling me again that the structure is sound. One of the things that jumped right out at me was that the center chimney was missing. So that was very common, especially right after the Second World War, 30s and in the 40s after the Second World War. The boys came home, remodeling was done to homes and whatnot, and they upgraded. So you didn't need this big chimney sucking up all the heat out of the house. Let's get that big thing out of there, put a little chimney in, put the stove in, furnace, or whatever you might have here. Okay. This is the back of the house now. This is a little addition that was off the left rear corner of the house. It measures 14 feet by 16 feet. And I was always curious as to what it might be. And the way it was connected into the house was that it wasn't added on as like a wing or an L. It was added on as an auxiliary building, and it was only connected by a very short section, maybe about 3 feet long, just enough for a doorway to go into that building. So when you see something like that, that kind of tells you that that structure was something unique. It wasn't meant to be lived in. It was something different, like a shop. And my instinct right from the beginning was that it was some kind of a shop. I had this little chimney off in the corner, which wouldn't take up the floor space. And as we got into the dismantling, I'll show you some things that became more and more apparent to us. Okay. There's another angled view of it. You can see how it's positioned in relation to the rest of the house. Okay. Now, one of the things that was incredible about this house is that front doorways virtually, or doorways in particular, virtually do not survive 200 and something years of weatherization. That porch, from what the family tells me, was put on once again in probably the late 30s, early 40s. They're not sure exactly, but now we've encapsulated that front door for the last 60 years or so and saved this from any further deterioration. This is a very rare example of a double entry doorway. Go to the next photo, please. And here we are side by side. And one of the things that is really evident is what they call that tulip latch, totally original to the house. Again, protected from weatherization. Even the sill down below had been replaced, but at some early time. But it was just incredible to find. It's just like a time capsule. I mean, you know, we all get excited by certain things. this got my blood pumping pretty good. All right. So whatever.
That was the first thing I wanted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I took those doors off first because I wanted to make sure that they didn't end up some other place. All right, next. Now this is a close-up of that latch. I mean, incredible workmanship. And one of the other things too that's a little unique about this one is that the handle itself is a little bit turned askew, so that it could be used in a door that's tight to the wall or whatever. But in this situation, it wasn't. But there it is, like the day it was put on, and it's still sitting there. The other feature about this, the next photo. Well, I guess we missed it. Just go back, Mike. Can you go back one more? One another one. I'm sorry. All right, is the glass at the top. Very unusual. We call those transom lights, but generally they're detached from the door. They're part of the framing that goes around the door. To have them in the door like that is a highly unusual and rare occurrence. And those 6 pieces of glass were all the original pieces of glass. You should see the bubbles and the swirls of those. My goodness, it's incredible. It's like, why do you put glass in it? You can't see through it at all. That's how it's stored.
How tall is that door? It looks pretty high.
It does look tall because it's so narrow, but it only measured about 78 inches tall, which is, 80 inches is code today. 78 is a generous height for that period of time. Okay, you jump ahead a few. No, let's catch up. All right, this was the next thing that was really intriguing. And I still haven't investigated this. When you get a big overmantel board like that, this is in the front right room. When you get a big board like that, especially with that molding that goes around the outside perimeter, it's called a collection molding. Oftentimes, murals were painted on those. I haven't investigated it yet, and I probably should, but something just says to me there's something there, and I haven't brought myself to try to remove and paint yet, even though the house is for sale. All right, next. This is that same room looking now towards the front doors and the entry coming into this room. You can see the early Georgian style of the paneling work that's there. One of the nice parts about this house was that as they remodeled things, they didn't destroy things. They went over it. They went over the top of things instead of ripping it out and replacing with new. As we get further into this, you'll see a few examples of that. Okay. There's a chimney cupboard applied to the little H hinges there, and that crown molding that goes across the top. Probably in the 40s or 50s, that swirl ceiling was put in, and they went right over the old plaster, which was interesting that whatever material that was used there actually helped hold the plaster in place. Okay. The front stairway, it's a typical dog leg stairway, as we call it. If you look at the grunge and the grime over the years of someone going up and down all the stairs and working to clean it, as we get further into this, you'll see that we were able to remove this whole stairway in one piece, which was quite a feat what we did. Down below, you see a register for heat, and there was like what they call a cording bench in those days. That was part of that. There was like a little bench that was originally there that had been removed at some time. We found the evidence of where it was and all. And if this house goes back together, well, when this house goes back together, not if, it will go back together someday, that will be restored the way it should be. But remarkable condition. All right. That's out of focus in case anybody's having difficulty out there questioning themselves. So let's go to the next photo. I'm sorry for that. This was the other thing that was just absolutely intriguing. Walking up into the attic, the framework, how clean and straight, and the original flooring was in place in the attic. Nothing had been disturbed. The original roofing boards in remarkable condition. One of the things that was very much a plus as far as this house goes is the pitch of the roof, because it was steeper than in general. Roofing lasts better on a steeper roof, and it sheds everything just so much better. And apparently the people, whoever lived in this house for all those years, kept a good roof on the house, because it never showed any signs of any major leaking or damage or dry rot or any of those kinds of things. Incredible. Okay? This was a little room that was in the lean-to section up in the attic. This is the very back of the house, just a short wall, part of the ceiling that went in. They actually used it as a closet, but this would have been like people call it servant's quarters. That's not the case here. Somebody used it as a bedroom chamber at some point. It was a small, unheated room, and one of those little windows on the side of the house would have been the only light that came into that particular room. And that would have been in the lean-to portion of the attic. Only about a third of the upstairs lean-to area was finished. The rest of it was totally raw. Okay? There's a little bit better view of that room. And you can see, again, there's the plaster on the ceiling. You can see that it's really, we got a few water stains here and there, but generally not, for something that's 200 and something years old. All right. Here's some more of the framing. This is on the attic, looking in one of the front corner of the house. You just look how clean and dry everything is. It really is remarkable. Okay. Now, as one of the first steps that we do when we dismantle a house is to take all the lath and the plaster out. And this is what's going on here. We're showing the house as it would have been trimmed prior to the lath and plaster being put in. So a lot of people think that the plaster was put in and then they put these things in afterward. It's not the case. Those big boards that you see, the ones that are running horizontally, vertically rather, were put in on the framing, then the trim work was put in, then the lath was put in. The lath was taken off on this side, but we left it remaining on the back, just for illustration purposes. And you can see this is a split lath. It's totally irregular. It's not sawed and perfect. They call it either split lath, sometimes they call it accordion lath, where they took a wide board and splintered it and stretched it out and nailed it up. We didn't find a lot of accordion lath here. We found a split lath where it's just split. You know, they took boards and just split it and nailed it on up. And that's one of the things I'm going to point out up here on this table are the little nails, the lath nails. I spent probably 2 days just pulling these out of the lath, and I got a pile. And you know, if you think you're crazy, you have to wonder who the guy was that made 5 million of these things all by hand. I mean, those little ones especially. My goodness, I mean, I don't know how they swung a hammer to work on something like this, but they did. Those are the lath nails. And then the next size nail is this about an 8-penny nail. It's with a rose head. These we used to put a lot of the trim work and stuff on. And there's some examples of that here. Okay, next. All the fireplaces were closed up. This is on the second floor. They were closed up. The chimney had been removed all the way down to the first floor. So behind this, there's absolutely nothing, just a void area because they've taken it out. But they put these covers over the top just to kind of dress it off a little bit. Okay. This is an unusual feature in this house. And it kind of attests to its age. And that is the length of those corner braces. It's hard to perceive it, I guess, in this picture, but those are like 7 feet long. 7 feet long, a little, taller than I am on a diagonal. That's an incredibly long brace. Most of the barns and outbuildings that are in eastern Connecticut or in central and eastern Connecticut, the braces generally don't exceed 44 to 46 inches. And that's a long brace. Here we are, we're talking double that. So that attests to the age of this house. Okay, next. One of the things that was very, what you see there is those aren't ghosts floating around there. Although when you go down to Pennsylvania, they make you think that that's what you're taking pictures of. Those are just dust particles, all right? So relax. The joists in this house were 2 full inches thick by 7 inches tall. Usually that indicates a later period house. And I was confused as we were taking this house down. Everybody was telling me that it was a 1740s house, and I was believing it from all the trim work I was seeing with the nails and all of that kind of stuff. But when we started to take the lath and plaster off upstairs, I'm looking at these joists and I'm saying, no way, this is later. This is a later house. And then as we go further, I'll explain to you where my mind started to go then. All right, next. All right, this is the other side that I lean to. That room I was like standing in that room that we were looking at before. This is looking now the other way. And again, I apologize for the dust. It just got so we breathed here for 3 or 4 months. Now here we go with taking the fireplace cover off, and as you can see, just a void area there now. But what was left is, on the left side of that mantle, you see a row of bricks. That's the edge of the original fireplace. So that told me what kind of a layup it was. Now, you've seen a layup of bricks, that is. You've seen bricks that are in fireplaces where they actually cut the angle on them. Well, these bricks were whole, and they made the edges, and then they built the firebox. So they didn't cut the bricks; they used them square in the opening. That attests to an earlier period in most cases. Okay, now this is again the front hallway. Now at the top of the stairs, looking down, you're getting to see kind of the skeleton of the house. And this is the kind of thing, as they were building it, it would have looked like this before they applied the lath and plaster. Okay? It's just another view of that. Now we've taken down that cupboard and some of those the lath and stuff going upstairs. Don Uricchio, so everybody know Don Uricchio up here? This guy right here is a character. He started showing up at this project at the very beginning. He could probably give this talk tonight. And
You do a better job.
yeah. But you see that handrailing that's going there? He hounded me for that piece of wood for like 3 months until I finally relinquished it. So
It's in my house.
he's got that handrail.
Thank you.
All right. I gotta give somebody credit.
Oh,
Okay, now we're downstairs, and we open up a wall, and I see this thing in the wall. I said, what the heck? And I'm looking at it, there are tracks for shutters in the wall. This house had interior shutters. That is a very early feature in most cases. Later on, they put them on hinges inside the house and closed them in, but to have them slide in the wall, that's an early feature. So there again, upstairs, I'm saying, my gosh, these saw joists, and now downstairs, this feature, it was very confusing. So there's the evidence of it right there. Go ahead. And I'm showing the track there now, what you see in this, I don't have my pointer, but this is a real close-up. The shutter, this is only, believe it or not, this is only about 1.25 inches wide. That's how much big it is. And there's a groove right there that the shutter ran on to keep it from sliding in and out. But that's, again, it tests, you have to know what you're looking at when you see it, or at least figure it out. It took me a few seconds, and because I never expected this at all. Okay. This is a close-up of some of the scribing and stuff that was on the wall with some figures and whatnot. We never found any names or dates or anything like that, but just some ciphering of some sort. I'm not sure if they were figuring out lumber or what. But the boards on the outside, that were the outside sheathing, those ranged generally between 16 and 20 inches wide. And they were shiplapped, which is a fairly early treatment. Okay, next. And there's that, showing the siding again, or the sheathing, I should say, with that chair rail that went in. Now, you can see that the window is lower than the chair rail, the rail for the shutter. You say to yourself, well, how can that be? How would the shutter slide over the windows? Well, these windows have been replaced, and when they did replace the windows, they dropped them down to be a little more stylish, instead of having them tucked up to the beam as they would be in the original construction. So they were dropped about 8 inches or so, I think, if I remember correctly. All right. And I'm not sure what I'm showing there. Oh, what we're showing there is that's a big board that's on the wall. That was one of the only ones that was left that was that created the pocket for the door for the shutter to slide into. And then they put the lath over the top of that and then plastered it. But that's what created the pocket to slide it into. So you say to yourself, when you restore this house, how would you do that? That's a good question. I don't know how you would do that. Because you need insulation. These houses have no insulation. The area where these shutters slid are where you would put the insulation today. So I'm working with a man now in California, ironically, that he's going to go possibly to the West Coast with this house. He's asking me how to handle that. And I'm saying, you're probably going to have to run them on the inside, build a chair rail, run them on the inside, which is what did occur a little bit later. This is definitely the earlier treatment. So there is a way to solve it, but it's not the way it would have originally been. Okay. This was that coffin door, that side door you saw in the early pictures. I just thought this was tremendous. That, there was plywood there forever, and I saw the back of the door. And whenever I opened it finally and looked, I said, oh my goodness, a 5-panel door in absolutely remarkable condition. And one of the things that I don't know, let's check the next picture. Yeah, if you look up close, you see where the door handle is? You can see some scarring down there, or some evidence, but it had a matching tulip latch on that door at some point that someone removed. And, see that coffee can right there? That's what I was saving those little nails in. So half of my mind is in that can. Better than the dough, I guess. Oh, there we go. There's the picture I was looking for. So you see the shadow lines of the old latch and all? Yeah, there it is. That's the photo I was looking for. Yeah. So I mean, stuff like that is just so intriguing to me. You can't fake that. There it is. It's proof in the pudding, as they say. Go ahead. Now, these are some shelving that was on the inside of that, to the left of that fireplace in the cupboard. And, way back then, people thought ahead. These little grooves in there to stand up plates and stuff so they don't slide. It's a subtlety that amazes me. The groove that went across the back, of course, that's easy to make because you have a zoom right across the board. But this one that comes up and intersects, how'd they do that? Somebody spent a little time not going too far or carving it to make it look right. So there's a lot of attention and detail and love that went into making that board. Hard to believe it. There it is. Okay. Just another view of the same kind of thing. It would have been just so much easier to plow right through with the plane or whatever they use, and they go right through and just cross-hatch it, but they didn't. Somebody took the time. All right. Now that door I showed you just a few moments ago, the 5-panel door, this is what it looks like on the inside. Very plain, nothing too exciting about it. The strap hinges certainly are remarkable. They're nice and big and long. But once you open the door and see those panels, wow, that was kind of a shame when we did this on the backside. All right. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier, about some of the features of the house, that they didn't rip them out and just replace. This is the original sheathing on the kitchen wall. Then they put plasterboard over the top of it and plastered over it and covered it up. I started ripping the wall down and bang, I'm like, what the heck? Something's bouncing here. I never expected it to be there. And son of a gun, that's when you see a couple of remarks over here. I got a little aggressive at the beginning, trying to peel this stuff off, and I damaged a little bit of it there because I didn't realize. I thought it would be just laughing plastic like everything else was. But those boards, some of those are 2 feet wide. I mean, the picture doesn't really show you that, but that's the original color, the original paint, the hand planing you can see is evident in it. Just incredible. Okay. There's another view. Now that third board in from the right left, that one is 24 inches for sure. Yeah, that's quite a board. All right. And here we go into the rest of the kitchen. Now we're panning to the right, and you see they're on the fireplace and everything else. You can see evidence of where they cut in the paneling above the fireplace to put in stove flues over the years or whatever. But the panel is there. Is it repairable? Absolutely. And it's just nice to have that original fabric still in place. Okay. Now you can see the room is divided. Look, they painted. You know what I mean? It's just hard to imagine that this can be something that can be in Colonial Homes magazine one day, but it could. What was really remarkable about this fireplace is that there's the beehive oven. When they tore the chimney out and brought the new chimney down, that's the new chimney on the left, that went all the way into the basement. The beehive oven they left intact. As we were taking the beehive oven apart, trying to salvage some of the bricks and all, so we could rebuild the fireplace at some later time. In the rear of the firebox was a rear ridge oven. Now that's the early one. Those were the first ones, and then this one was added in later. So this house went through a couple of remodelings as time progressed. Okay. No, there's that. I had to put that one. There's that 24 board. Woo! All right. Okay. Now here's the framing I was talking about. Those ceiling joists. Those are 2x7s or 2x8s, I can't remember, full thickness. Now, in an early house, you must have heard the word summer beam, or the term summer beam. In the earlier houses, the majority of the framing was done with that. Through the center of the room, they had a beam that was between 14 and 16 inches wide, and went right down the center of the room. And off of that came little 3x4-inch joists. And when we opened up these, upstairs and down, they were absent of summer beams. So I'm saying to myself, the summer beams started to disappear about 1750s, 1760s in Connecticut, a little earlier in some places. But that's a generality. And who made that generality? A guy named Kelly, who wrote Early Domestic Architecture of Connecticut, that book. That's kind of like a Bible as we've known it. He made that generality. Here's a 1740s house, and there's no summer beams. I'm going to give people here in the Enfield area in central Connecticut a little credit. You guys are a little more evolved than all of us eastern Connecticut. You know, the building techniques got ahead of us. They got ahead of the curve, so to speak. They didn't catch up to eastern Connecticut yet. So that's what I think happened here. I don't think we have. I think we definitely still have the early house, but some of those features that you find in the countryside, so to speak, were absent. Okay. Now, this is back in that little shed, or that little shop that we were talking about. And that's the little stove chimney in the corner. Just kind of showing you the similar construction. And as we're working in there, I'm thinking to myself, yep, right there. I'm thinking to myself, what was this? And my mind plays games with me sometimes. And I'm usually not off too far. Don, can you attest to that?
Oh, yeah.
But I kept feeling it was a cobbler's shop, and I don't know why. It could have been a lawyer's shop. It could have been a tinsmith shop. I kept feeling it was a cobbler's shop. But one of the things I'm just going to put on this picture, particularly we'll go forward, is that this is the shop, and this is the house behind here. This is a bolt. There's a bolt, nut and bolt right there, a block of wood. That's the only thing that was holding that to the house to keep it from moving away, tilting away, which I think is incredible. All blacksmith made and all. Okay, next. Now, after we tore out this wall, I find this door, an old doorway, leading towards the street. Now I said to myself, absolutely, it was definitely a shop. Because there's no way they would have a single little room like that with a public or a road, an entrance to the road. There's just no way. People just didn't live like that in those days. So this pretty much sealed it for me. I said, yeah, it was definitely a shop. What kind of shop? Well, we'll never know. Next. And there were some windows on the other wall, as you referred in. And this is what the little detective work where it comes in as you're going along. House tells the story. Go ahead. It's like a window on the wall. Now, this was in the kitchen. You know where we saw those vertical boards? This is on the back wall of the house, the horizontal boards. There's that ceiling is 99. That wall is 99 inches tall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just do the simple, quick math. Those are roughly 20-inch boards, right? You know? Amazing. Beautiful. And into the corner. Now, there was a beam casing that would have gone over that corner beam there, but the kitchen that had been put in there, they took that off because they needed to make space to put the cabinetry and stuff that was in there, but nevertheless, there it all is. It's hard to imagine when you look at those boards as kind of decrepit and, not very flattering how beautiful they can be by cleaning them up and restoring them and whatever. Okay, next. There's a couple more of those boards over the stairway, just kind of, this was a secondary stairway that was put in off the kitchen. And you can see it went down a little further at some point, and I decided, we're not going to use that anymore. We're going to cut off the bottom 2 steps and put a wall there, and maybe, but they left the stairway in there. So whenever they opened up this closet door, there was a stairway. Of course, that became shelving, Anyway, a stepped pantry, so to speak. See it? See it down there? How good it crunch things. Now, this is where the big revelation came in. Right in front of this window, those boards that are on the wall. As I was taking down the short ones between the window and that post that you see to the far right of this photo, as we're taking that down, I get to about chest level, and I start encountering glass. I'm like, what the heck is this? You know, everybody, and that was like the last bunch of stuff that we were taking down for interior walls. Everybody comes to these houses and says to me, oh, what'd you find in the walls? Nothing. Because people didn't have anything. They don't put stuff on the walls. I mean, why would it be on the walls? Well, this one, like, I have to eat my words now, because this stuff was in the wall. All these bottles and trinkets, and I mean, it was chock full all the way to the bottom. I've got about 80-something bottles, probably 30 of them that are complete, hand-blown bottles and things, and the majority of these bottles and things that were in there it said French dressing. Well, I said, what the heck? Man, somebody was in the French dressing. And then I'm looking, and then I just thought, I can't believe who the heck would be using that much French dressing. And then I'm reading a little further, and it says ladies and children's boots and shoes, trunks and harnesses. It's a dressing for leather. Not French dressing as we know, Of course, it doesn't show you how semantic, how things change, terms change over the years. But there's oodles of these bottles in there, shoe buttons in there, other little things related to the shoe, different brands of dressing, if you will. So, to me, that pretty much clinches what that little shop was. There's too much of it for a household to have that there. Now, was the guy a harness maker? Maybe. So, it may not be shoes, but something with leather work, for sure. Okay? As we peel off the cedar siding on the outside, well, of course, there's the original clapboard. I don't know if I have a picture coming up, but that's set back. But, taking that cedar siding off and just going back to the clapboard really makes you feel what the house was like. And certainly by removing this porch and all, too, same thing. Okay. Oh, there you go. There's a kind of a picture of that. Getting back. I must use a wide angle lens on this one. I guess not. Just a story of understanding. But I was hoping to find the front stairs still under the porch, but there were no steps anyplace. Whatever steps that had been on the house, somebody carted them away some time ago. Okay. Now this was a little addition porch on the back side. Just a little entryway, kind of a boot room, coat room kind of a thing. As you can see, they just didn't really mangle the house too much. When they tied something in, they tied it in fairly logically and didn't chop anything up. Okay. There's that porch removed. There's the little shop building way off in the back. Going to this hill. But you can see the intersection. It's not very big. It overlaps the house. Okay. Here we go. It's kind of a pretty good picture to show you the lines of what it might look like. The people that own this own the property. That is, they live in Mississippi. One of the sisters. And she did send me a photograph from the 40s with a bunch of the family standing out in the front, and of course the house was just like this, in about that condition. So, and the chimney, you could see the chimney in the just very, very base of the chimney, so you knew it had to be taken out in the 40s about that time. One of the things that was very unusual about this period of a house is the brick foundation. A lot of people were questioning me as far as that goes, but those bricks are very early, all handmade, double wall thickness on top of stones. So, again, this area being a little more commercial, if that's the word, those kinds of things would be a little more readily available. Okay, next. Now, when we're taking things apart, we have to come up with a coding system of how we're going to do this, and every single room is labeled. We have a coding system where the boards go, A wall, B wall, C wall, and this is just to kind of give you an idea of how we go about this. It's reverse construction. Okay? And if you can see the hand planing and stuff on these boards. and all. And as you get further up, you see the plaster line, the old white plaster line, and then right above the plaster line, there's the raw wood, just like the day it was made. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful. All right. Some more, you know, how we go about labeling things. I tried to keep all of these doorway frames together. All the miter joints are put together with little fine hand-wrought nails. All the joints are put together with those, so I didn't want to disturb those as much as possible. And so these things could just be, you know, cleaned up with paint and put back. Okay? And there we go, just kind of, again, illustrating what's going on. Just another view, go ahead. Again. All right, now this is the little shop building when that was skinned down. As you can see, it's pretty simple framing. It looks like a barn because that's all the buildings are built the same general way. Houses, the framing was just a little more refined because it was going to be something that was, you know, for people as opposed to animals. All right.
So that was quite early too, right?
Yeah, I'm guessing that had to be about 1820 or 30. Yeah, I mean it's not. Yeah, it's fairly early. Yeah. It would be something interesting. I don't know if anybody here is into the research of you know, commerce in that time, if they know of any harness maker or leather worker that was in operation at that time. But with something, with a structure like that, it would definitely show up on the tax rolls for sure. You know, tax paperwork. Okay. Now, here's the, now let's see, where are we here? Oh, this is the front room. What is this? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, this is the front room, right, thank you. Don, I'm glad you were there. Yeah, that overmantel was taking off, the big boards were taking off, and this is what you can found behind. You can see the evidence of the old fireplace and all in there. And all that, all those bricks were laid up in just clay mortar, meaning just basically clay, mud that dried, and these bricks, we could take them off just like this, you know, and put them on pallets. They cleaned off so easily. It was incredible. No mortar whatsoever. Okay? There's that cupboard, the earlier cupboard I showed you, the grooves in the shelves. All these things are labeled. This one was built into the fireplace too. You can see they used every bit of space that they could. They stepped the back of it to make the lower section of the cupboard deeper than the top. I just find that that's pretty incredible. Oh, and that's a picture of the glass and stuff that I was encountering as we were coming down on those boards. I mean, look at it. It looks like a trash bin. And so I was just thinking of taking the boards and ripping them on and off and letting stuff fall. But you know, something said don't do that. I put some good gloves on and I just kept extracting it little by little, and it was like a treasure hunt. It was like a treasure hunt. We've got this guy here that's a metal detector, so he knows how crazy that can be to be digging treasure like that. These guys are going to the ice up there in the Bering Sea looking for gold. This is more fun for me. And just another view of that. It's just amazing how much. I don't know how it got in there. That's the part that puzzles me, because there's two beams on either side of this opening. The exterior sheathing never looks like it was disturbed. The interior sheathing looks like it was never disturbed. So how did this stuff get in the wall? I don't know. I can't figure that out. So if somebody knows, give me a call.
Did you find any tools relating to leather work?
There was a couple of button hooks in there, which of course that's not necessarily leather work, but there were a lot of the little buttons and the shoe kind of buttons and that kind of stuff. But there were no tools per se. I don't know. Yeah, it's just bizarre. I mean, there was a lot in there. So I mean, it was done over quite a period of time because I didn't know it. And even today, with the trash regenerator, it would take a while to fill it up the way it was. Go ahead. And this is just kind of a cross section of some of the stuff, and I brought some of it here tonight. You can look at it a little bit later. But it just, you know, as you can see, it was just, I was having too much fun pulling all this stuff out. Well, one of the things that's really unusual is when you find hand-blown bottles, which so many of these are, you never find them with the paper labels, because as some people in the crowd here have talked about, these things are buried outside oftentimes, or in a damp area, the labels fall off. This was an outside wall. Some of the labels are not the best, of course, but a lot of them are there, they're intact, but we'll see it. So that was really another level of excitement. If anybody knows who that lady is in the photograph, give me a call too. All right. Now this is one from your neck of the woods here. Best sewing machine oil, M-Lap for the House sewing machine, Thompsonville, Connecticut. There's a local piece. Now, one of the things that I anticipated doing was donating these things to your society. However, and that may still occur, but the person buying this house is like as excited about this stuff as I am, or the person contemplating buying this house, and at this point he wants it to remain as part of the deal, if you will. So hopefully he may change his mind, so we'll see. Next. Yeah, there we go. Just a little closer. Just kind of wave it in front of your nose a little bit. Yeah. Now, here's those roof boards to the outside. Look at the condition of those. It's amazing. I know it may not be impressive to you, but the rafters, how straight they are. There's no ridge pole. That indicates the age of the house. One of the things that was incredibly unique. Let's check the next picture, Mike. Okay. You see all the boards, how they're in banks of the same size, going up one section? Very unusual. Very unusual. Because, you know, they realized pretty early on that when you lap the joints and overlap the joints, that you get a stronger structure. When you put things in banks like that, it's not the best. But yet this house was done that way, kind of attesting to the early craftsmanship, if you will, of the area. Okay. And here she comes, coming down. You know, those front rafters we took off first because they're short. They're about, I think they're 11 feet long, the front ones. And the rear ones go all the way down to the back of the roof line. Okay. See, there they are, right there. Those, I forgot the exact measurement, but I think they're 28 feet long. I think they're 28 feet. That's ringing a bell, I'm pretty sure it is. 27, 28, so there's someplace. Okay. Yeah. They were oak and chestnut, but primarily oak, which again, the earlier houses were oak. Chestnut we started to use a little bit later as the oak supply started to dwindle. It's hard to believe that they could clear cut the state of Connecticut, but it virtually was by the middle of the 1800s for firewood and lumber and building and whatnot. You see some of the early vista pictures of these areas. My goodness, you can see for miles, you know. And conservation definitely is important, especially with the population we is now. Okay. There's some of those rafters laying down in the back. One of the things that was very interesting about this house is what they call a double plate system. That the top beam that goes across is where the rafters sat on, and then they put a secondary beam just below it to hang the floor joists on. Oftentimes, those are all one and the same. And somebody had a knowledge of the stresses in a building to do that. Because that's, when I build some of my new barns, we use that technique today to gussy up the plate above for snow load. Okay. Now, you see all these little silver flags all over the thing. I mean, I have to sit there and draw a picture, stamp each one of these tags. We use these metal stamps, and then somebody's got to go and label all these things, put them all on. And that's basically, it's a big erector set. Now, we were talking about the early salt box configuration. See, that section, the tall section that you see, that would have been the original salt box style house, that 18 feet deep, that is. I know it doesn't look like in this picture, but that's 18 feet between those two tallest posts. And that would have been your normal salt box, and then the lean-to would have been put on. But again, this house was framed from the outset to always be a salt box. Okay. That beam right there is 38 feet long. It doesn't look like it in the picture, but that's 38 feet. And it measures 8 by 9, by 9. That's a heavy stick. Even with the machine, it was a challenge to bring it down. Those 2x4s you see on the back there, what we do with those is we screw those onto the back. Because of all the cuts that are in there, it becomes like what they call a kerf cut. And if I didn't put those on there to strengthen that beam, it would want to fold up under its own weight because of all those pockets out there, if you can understand that. So those are the kinds of things that you have to deal with as you're taking something like this apart. There's really a lot of more thought than you might think. Okay. Now, the other thing that's very interesting about this house is that those posts that you see that the big beam is off the front, now you see all those tenons sticking out, those little fingers like those tenons. Those posts flared, and a lot of people refer to that as gun stock. That's kind of a generic term. That's technically, if you want to be correct for going forward, that's a flared post. A gun stock post is one where it comes up a little ways, and then it has a big belly in it, and then widens out. That's a true gun stock post, for whatever it's worth, they would. Okay. Here's that stairway I was telling you about. And we finally got everything moved out of the way that we could pull it up and pick it up all in one piece. So, you're going to say, how are you going to put it back? I don't know. I don't know.